Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we are taking a look at the Cold Steel Frenzy. And I've got to say, guys, this is a pretty enjoyable knife. It's interesting. It's, of course, quite large. It's really well put together. And I've got to say, I've actually really enjoyed this knife and getting prepared to do this video for you. But let me say right out the gate, this is not an EDC style knife, okay? This is not the knife you put in your pocket for cutting apples, whittling wood, you know, the kind of little things, cutting a piece of rope from time to time that you're going to do with your everyday carry blade. All right, this is a knife that's designed to function in the role of a weapon, a defensive or offensive tool, okay? Now, let me say that if you need that, and a lot of people do, that's completely okay. I'm not sure if this would be necessarily my very first choice, and let me just make that argument for a moment, okay? If you just need purely an EDC blade, I think this is one of the best options out there. If you want something that is good for EDC, but then can also fill in that role as a defensive tool, I think this is a great option. And this is where I feel like this knife really falls a little bit short. All right, because this is a fantastic tool that you can use millions of times every day for all kinds of things, whether it be, you know, cutting up a steak for your supper, or a piece of rope, or opening a package, or, you know, if you need to defend your life from zombies, this is still a really, really capable option. All right, this, out of the scenarios I described, is good for the zombie situation, but not as much the others. Okay, so I've got to put that out there right away and understand that this review will sort of embrace that idea that, look, this is primarily designed as a weapon, as a tactical tool, defensive, offensive, whatever the case may be. And as such, it's highly, highly functional, but the versatility is where it lacks a little bit, okay? Now, the other thing I have to say about this knife is it is one of the coolest designs that I am aware of. It's attractive with the blue and the layered G10. I love the blade shape. I love the satin finish. Not only that, it's a really cool looking knife. Some people, when they come to talk to me about knives, especially my friends who know I have a YouTube channel, but they're really non-knife people, they want to see something like this, okay? If you show them this, they're a little underwhelmed. But if you show them this, they're like, yeah, that's what I expected a knife guy to have. So there's that benefit to this as well. So there's a lot of cool factor here. This is an extremely attractive design as far as I'm concerned. And so for all of those reasons, this is a really, really cool knife, despite the fact that it maybe has some limitations. All right. So look, because this is such a cool knife, and because I can absolutely see why many of you watching would want to justify picking one of these up, I have taken some time and some thought, and I've got some really, really practical purposes that you could put this knife to, so that when your wife says, why on earth did you buy that? You've got some excuses at the ready, okay? Or even in those moments of self-doubt where you say to yourself, why do I need this? Instead of saying, I don't, okay, this is how you can answer, either yourself or perhaps someone else who's somewhat critical of purchasing a knife of this nature, all right? First off, this is a fantastic zombie killing knife. All right, this has got the blade length to reach the brain stem from pretty much any angle. So it's really hard to mess this up. If you put this into a zombie's head, you are pretty much going to finish it off, okay? And that's really, really helpful. Of course, another great role for this knife is skinning coconuts. You know, you may recall the Snex had the specific design philosophy for being, you know, overbuilt and tough so that the designer and maker could skin coconuts. Well, you know, for $1,000, you can pick up one of those, or for like, I don't know, 125 bucks, you can pick up one of these and have all the same utility, maybe a little less weight, but just as much toughness and utility. For cooking, all right, this is a really, really good cooking tool. You know, you could cut brontosaurus steaks with this, and then the knife is long enough that you can skewer the steak here on the end and cook it over the fire yourself. You know, just a little rotation like that, and the ergonomics are well suited to rotating the knife. So works really well as a cooking tool, especially if you're cooking over a campfire. You want to throw, you know, a marshmallow or something on the tip out there and cook away. All right, a hunting knife. Now, most of you may say, you know, a buck 110 is more of a hunting knife, or maybe something like this. This is the the Tops Idaho Hunter. I get that this blade shape is probably more traditionally associated with hunting. However, if you are doing a particular kind of hunting that I've read about, I've never seen, and so if someone's out there who's done this or has more experience with it, go ahead and comment down below. But I have heard stories that First Nations people used to, when the herds of caribou were moving, they would find like a rock or a tree to hide behind. And as the herds of caribou went around that rock or tree, they would just kind of reach out from their hiding spot, boom, stab the animal, cut its throat, and that's how they would, be able to get a caribou. Now, maybe that's completely made up, and the place that I read it was, not reliable at all. But if it's true, okay, that's a hunting method, this knife would be ideal for it because you've got tons of reach. All right, I suppose the other option would be if you're the kind of person who is going to, sit in on a tree limb and leap down onto, a deer or a buck a deer or a pig or whatever else you happen to be hunting and, try to jump on its back and slit its throat from behind. This would be a great option for that style of hunting as well. And Cold Steel has gone to great lengths to demonstrate this knife as well as other knives in their collection, their ability to eviscerate pig carcasses like nobody's business. So I think that's a legitimate use as well. If your life and your life story has inspired a slasher film, then this is a great knife. Or if if that's your objective is to have a slasher film based on your life, this is definitely the knife for you. All right, back to my initial discussion. This is really a great knife to impress your friends, to intimidate your enemies. It's a great knife for Instagram. Okay, all those things I think are completely legitimate reasons to buy a knife. If you need to get a sliver out of your foot, but by the way, I just had my 39th birthday, so this is going to be me soon, I'm sure, in a couple of days. If you need to get a sliver out of your foot, but you can't bend down and touch your toes anymore, this is a perfect knife. Look at all the reach you get. You barely have to bend over to get a sliver out of your foot. If you're cutting a birthday cake, right, you've got enough blade here that you can reach almost halfway across the cake, cut that into nice slices there, not to mention what everyone at the birthday is going to say when you pull this thing out and start cutting the cake. That's definitely going to make an impression. If you need a defensive tool for ninjas that, leap out of the shadows at you from time to time, again, this is inspired by a Japanese design, so it works perfectly in that role. One last use, and this is appropriate for lots of Cold Steel knives. If you need to work on your thumb strength, this is a great exercise tool. You don't even need to go out and buy one of those tools those grip strengtheners. You can just use your Cold Steel Frenzy. Now, this one is probably, I'm pretty used to Cold Steel, so my thumbs are already pretty strong, but for some of you, you may need that one. Now, having put all of that out there, let me tell you a little more real practical stuff about this knife. This is a large knife, okay? It's 6 7/8 closed, so it's almost 7/8 of an inch long. It's almost 7 inches long when it's closed. I will say the clip is moved down, so it only needs pockets that are about 6 inches deep. And I have to add this, okay, guys? This knife carries surprisingly well. Honestly, I have carried this a fair bit. I always try to do that for any knife I'm going to review. And I kind of thought, okay, this knife is going to be a pain in the neck to have in your pocket on any kind of regular basis, but it's surprisingly slim and it's surprisingly lightweight at only 5.7 ounces. So it actually carries quite well. And I've got to give a lot of credit there. If you really need a folding pocket sword and you need to carry it on your person regularly, this is a good option because it's so non-obtrusive when being carried. It is 12 3/8 overall, so it's longer than even the ruler that I normally use on this channel. The blade is 5 5/8, so almost 6 inches long. So that gives you kind of a little bit of, the size and weight here. The blade here is S35 VN. You've got this very gentle curve that is going to, make this a real slasher. The tip is quite fine. So for a knife of this size, you got to think you can put a lot of leverage on that tip. It's going to require a little bit of care. It really is. This is not a knife I think you want to drop on the concrete. You'll definitely be breaking that tip off. And with that curve, it's going to be really difficult to make it look pretty again. So please don't do that. Otherwise, though, I've got to say, it's fairly thin behind the edge. It comes quite sharp from cold steel. The only thing that could make this a better cutting tool, in terms of slicing, is if this grind were a little higher. All right, but given, again, the purpose of this knife, that's really not a huge consideration. It just isn't. If you're buying this knife, it's really not, because you're going to use it for slicing a lot of tomatoes. All right, triad lock is fantastic. I do like the triad lock. I'm a big fan of it, despite my my mild dig there at it being a little tough to disengage. I like cold steel. I have tons of cold steels, and I don't even notice the triad lock at this point. I know there may be some people out there with, I don't know, severe arthritis, or, their children, or, they have no body strength at all. And I get it. For those people, the triad lock could be a bit of a challenge. But I think for the average grown man, it's not going to be a problem. And even for the average grown woman, it's not going to be much of a problem. The handle here is very comfortable. It really is. It's well built. It's extremely grippy. Like, this is not a knife that's going to go anywhere. When you've got a hold of this, you really, really do have it. And so from that perspective, again, this is very, very well done. I have no issue. I think the handle looks beautiful. It is available in a couple of other colors. So maybe you like green or gray, or I can't remember what other colors. It's probably available in OD green as well. I can't recall. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here. There's no steel liners in this handle, which is great, because that's one of the reasons that the weight is down as low as it is. And the pocket clip is highly functional and movable. So if you're a lefty, this is a very ambidextrous knife. You can easily switch this around and carry it on the other side. And I know some guys who carry, if you want a folding knife to use primarily in a defensive role, then that may be a thing for you. Because I know a lot of guys who carry a handgun on their right side want to carry the knife on the left side. All right. I do want to bring in a couple of comparisons here, primarily two, and these are ones actually, I'll bring in one more, but these are knives you'll be fairly familiar with if you have been around my channel for any length of time. These are two favorite knives of mine. This is the Formax, and this is the Recon 1. Of course, both of these are cold steels. We could probably add the Crooked River, which just happened to be here today. In terms of a large knife that could absolutely serve as a defensive, in a defensive role. This one, of course, has that beautiful marble carbon fiber from Rogue Blade Works, maybe moving it a little bit further into the pocket jewelry realm than these other guys. Okay, but let's point out a couple of things here. Both of these knives are a little more utilitarian than the Frenzy. The Frenzy is cooler for sure than the Recon 1. I don't know if it's cooler than the Formax. I like the Formax quite a bit. But if you're going to be doing more than simply carrying this knife in your pocket just in case, okay, which is not really, that's not something that I do. Right? The things that I carry are things that I anticipate using in some way. And man, if I am anticipating using this, things have really taken a turn for the worst in my life. And so for that reason, both of these I would recommend above the Frenzy for, an actual knife you're going to carry and use. Now, if you're like me and you look at this knife and go, that is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, it's absolutely one of the coolest knives in Cold Steel's lineup, then hey, right, that makes total sense to me. It absolutely does. And there's nothing that I or anyone can say to dissuade you. So in conclusion, look, this is a well-built knife. It's got good materials. It's got, good attention to detail, a very strong lock, a very capable blade, a comfortable handle. All of the things that this knife should be, it absolutely is. The only question is this a knife that you or I actually need? And if I'm totally honest, the answer for me is no, not really. All right. However, none of us buy only the things we absolutely need. And so even if you don't need this, if you have no practical purpose for it other than the 10 that I just gave you, it is a stinking cool knife. And I totally understand why a person would want to own this. even if they, are never going to be attacked by zombies, are never going to be, marching through, some kind of horrible situation where death awaits around every corner. This is still a cool knife, and it's certainly something cool to have and to check out. So I get it. And from that perspective, this is an awesome knife, highly recommended. From the other perspective of purely practical, yeah, no, there are other more practical knives out there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.